Hi, I'm Carmen from Minerva, and today I'm going to be showing you how to sew up a comfy and stylish pair of leggings. The pattern I'm going to be showing you how to sew today is the Simplicity 8561, and I'm going to be showing you how to sew up view D with two contrasting stretch knit fabrics. Sewing with stretchy knit fabrics can seem scary if you've never done it before, but it's actually pretty simple, and you can put together a pair of leggings in less than 2 hours. Now, when you're working with knits, using a serger can be a really great help, but you can still sew knits without a serger. You just need to use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine to allow the fabric to stretch once it's sewn. If you sew stretchy fabric with a straight stitch, that seam isn't going to stretch and your stitches can pop when you stretch the garment to put it on. So to avoid popping stitches, you'll want to use either a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine or an overlock stitch on your serger. Alright, let's get into sewing the leggings. But before we get to the sewing, you'll need to choose your size. To choose your size, you're going to need to take two different measurements, your waist and your hip. The waist measurement should be taken at the smallest part of your torso, and the hip measurement for this particular pattern is taken 9 inches below your waist. Once you've got those two measurements, go ahead and compare them to the size chart on the back of the pattern and choose which size most closely corresponds to your measurements. Thankfully, knits are pretty forgiving, so if your waist and hip fall in different sizes or if your measurements are between two sizes, you can just go with the smaller of the two sizes. There's really no need to grade between sizes unless your waist and hip fall into sizes that are more than 2 sizes apart on the size chart. Alright, let's get into the materials you'll need to sew up this pattern. And of course, I've tagged everything that I used in this tutorial down below, so you can check that out if you want to sew the exact same leggings that I'm making here. First, here are the materials you'll need for your leggings. 2 colors of stretch knit fabric, the Simplicity 8561 sewing pattern in your size, thread in a color matching your project, and 1/2 inch wide elastic. Next, you'll need to cut the pieces of your leggings. Cut 2 fronts of your main fabric, 2 side panels of your accent fabric, 2 pocket bindings of your main fabric, 2 back yoke and front pocket pieces of your accent fabric, 2 back pieces of your main fabric, 1 yoke front piece on the fold from your main fabric, and 1 yoke back piece on the fold from your main fabric. With the pieces cut out, now it's time to start sewing. Let's start by grabbing the pocket binding pieces. We're going to press 1/4 inch under to the wrong side along one of the long edges of each of the pocket binding pieces. Now, if your fabric is holding a nice crisp press, you don't need to bother with pinning this at all, but I find that this type of stretchy activewear fabric usually doesn't hold a press very well, so I'm going to add some pins to hold this folded edge in place. Repeat this process for the other pocket binding piece, and then grab your side panel pieces and lay them right sides up on your table. Next, pin 1 pocket binding piece to each of the side panel pieces along the curved edge, making sure that they're right sides together. You'll want to match up the unfolded edge of the pocket binding pieces along the raw edge of the fabric on the side panel piece. Next, stitch both the pocket binding pieces to the side panel pieces with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. You'll want to do this either on your serger or with a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine so that the pieces can still stretch. Then press the binding pieces out away from the side panel pieces, making sure to press the seam allowances towards the binding. Once you've got it pressed, turn the binding up and over the seam allowance towards the wrong side and pin it in place. The folded edge of the binding should just cover the stitching attaching the binding to the side panel. Once the pocket bindings are pinned in place, take it to your sewing machine and stitch right along the seam within the fabric of the side panel piece. You'll want to use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine so that this top stitching can still stretch. This stitching should catch the folded edge of the pocket binding, holding it in place. Next, take one of the back yoke and front pocket pieces and lay it right sides up on your table. Then place the corresponding side panel piece on top of it with the wrong side down. So the wrong side of the side panel piece should be to the right side of the back yoke and front pocket piece. Make sure to line up the raw edges, the notches, and the dots. Pin the side panel to the back yoke and front pocket piece along the sides and the bottom. Now we need to mark in the stitching line along the bottom of the pocket. So to do this, grab your pattern piece for the side panel and line it up along the fabric of the side panel. Next, clip into the fabric just a tiny amount, you want it to be less than 1/4 of an inch deep, along each side of the stitching line marked on the pattern. This will mark the two ends of the stitching line so that we can fill in the line with a ruler. Once you have your notches made, simply line up a ruler across the side panel piece, making sure that each side of the ruler is aligned with the notches in the fabric, and then use a fabric marker or a pen to draw a straight line across the side panel piece. Next, stitch the side panel to the back yoke and front pocket piece along the sides with a long straight basting stitch. Then stitch along the stitching line at the bottom of the pocket piece with a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. Then repeat that whole process to sew the other side panel to the other back yoke and front pocket piece. Next, pin one of the side panel pieces to the corresponding front piece with right sides together. Make sure to match up the notches as you pin. Once you get it pinned, take it to your serger or your sewing machine and stitch that seam with either a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch. Then pin the corresponding back piece to the other side of the side panel piece with right sides together. The curved edge of the back piece should be matched up with the curved edge of the side panel piece. Now these curves go in opposite directions to create that nice contour over the bum. So just take your time when pinning these two pieces together, making sure to match up the notches and making sure that there aren't any puckers in the fabric. Once you get them pinned together, go ahead and take the pieces to your serger or sewing machine and stitch them together with an overlock stitch or a zigzag stitch. Once sewn, use your iron to press the seam allowances away from the side panel piece. Next, fold the pant leg with right sides together, matching up the front and the back along the inseam. Pin these two edges together, making sure to match the notches and the dots. You might need to slightly stretch the back to fit to the front, but that is totally okay. Once you've got it pinned, again, take the pant leg to your sewing machine or your serger and stitch the inseam with an overlock stitch or a zigzag stitch. You will now have one pant leg for your leggings, so repeat that whole process to sew up the other leg of your leggings. Once you have both legs sewn, turn one leg right sides out and leave the other one inside out. Then, insert the right sides out leg into the inside out leg so that they are right sides together. Then match up the two legs along the curved crotch seam and pin them together. Make sure to match up the inseam as well as the notches so that they're lined up perfectly. Once you have the crotch seam pinned, take it to your sewing machine or your serger and stitch it with a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch. Pull the inner pant leg out of the leggings, turn them right sides out, and now you have what looks like a pair of leggings with no waistband. So let's fix that and move on to sewing the waistband. Start by grabbing your front and back yoke pieces and lining them up with right sides together. Match them up and pin them along the short edges, making sure that the notches are lined up. Once you've got the short edges pinned, take them to your serger or your sewing machine and stitch them with a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch. Once sewn, press the seam allowances either open or to one side. Next, on the wrong side of the waistband, measure halfway up the waistband and draw a line straight across all the way around. This will be the fold line where the waistband will be folded in half. If you prefer, you could use the fold line marked on the pattern piece to mark this line in instead, but I just found the ruler to be easier. Cut a piece of elastic to the length of the elastic guide pattern piece. Then overlap the ends of the elastic by 5/8 inch and pin them together. Before you sew, double check to make sure that there are no twists in the elastic, because then you will have to seam rip and redo it, which is no fun. Once the ends of the elastic are overlapped and pinned, stitch an X across the overlapped ends of the elastic using a straight stitch on your sewing machine. Stitch over this X at least 3 or 4 times to make sure that it's super secure. Next, we need to quarter the loop of elastic as well as the waistband to help us to apply the elastic evenly. To do this, start by putting a pin where the ends of the elastic overlap. Then fold the elastic in half with that pin on one end. Then find where the elastic folds opposite the first pin and place another pin at the center of the fold. Your elastic is now halved. Next, match up the 2 pins at the center and place 2 more pins at the folds to either side of the first 2 pins. This will evenly quarter your elastic. To quarter the waistband, repeat that same process, placing your first pin approximately at the center back of the waistband, folding the waistband along that pin, placing another pin directly opposite it at the center front, then lining up those first 2 pins at the center and placing 2 more pins in the folds to either side of the first 2 pins. Once both the elastic and the waistband are quartered with pins, pin the elastic to the waistband, matching up one of the edges of the elastic right along the drawn-in fold line on the waistband. You want to match up the 4 pins on the elastic with the 4 pins on the waistband. Now, usually I place the overlapped ends of the elastic at the center back pin of the waistband. I just prefer to have the bulky end of the elastic at the back. The elastic will be slightly shorter than the waistband, but the pins will help to make sure that the stretch of the elastic is evenly spaced around the waistband. Once the elastic is pinned to the waistband at the 4 quarter marks, take it to your sewing machine and, stitching along the edge of the elastic closest to the fold line, sew the elastic to the waistband with a zigzag stitch. Make sure to stretch the elastic between each set of pins as you sew, just stretching it enough so that it fits the waistband. You don't want to stretch the fabric of the waistband, you're only going to want to stretch the elastic so that it fits the waistband properly. Next, fold the waistband in half with wrong sides together, folding it right along the top edge of the elastic, which should be right along the fold line. Line up the two raw edges at the base of the waistband, matching up the side seams, and pin the raw edges together. Baste the raw edges of the waistband together with a long straight stitch, then give the waistband a light pressing with your iron. Turn the waistband so that it is upside down and the side of the waistband with the elastic is faced outwards towards you. Then place the waistband over the right side of the leggings, lining up the raw edges of the waistband along the top raw edge of the leggings. Pin the waistband to the leggings, making sure to match up the seams, the notches, and the dots. You may need to slightly stretch the waistband to fit, but that's okay. The most important thing is to make sure that the notches and the dots are matched up. Once you have the waistband pinned to your leggings, take it to your serger or your sewing machine and stitch the waistline seam with an overlock stitch or a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. Give the waistline of your leggings a good pressing the seam allowance down towards the pants. And all that's left to do is hemming. To hem the leggings, fold the bottom of each pant leg up by 5/8 of an inch towards the wrong side and pin it in place. Give it a good pressing and then stitch the hem in place, sewing with a zigzag stitch 1/4 inch below the raw edge. And that's it, your leggings are done. This is such a great evening or weekend project if you just want to whip up something cute and comfy really fast. I hope you're feeling more confident sewing knit fabrics and are ready to take on sewing up your very own pair of leggings. If you have any questions at all as you go through this tutorial, feel free to drop a comment down below and we will do our best to help you out. And of course, if you want to make the same pair of leggings that I am making today, all the supplies you need are tagged down below. Thanks for watching and happy sewing!